Step one is to stop and focus on the right goal. And this is important, and in everything that I've written in terms of books and whatnot, I always start with this. There's actually a book that I like, the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Dr. Stephen Covey. One of the habits is begin with the end in mind. So that's kind of what we're doing here. What are we trying to accomplish on this call that we're going to make to try to schedule an appointment? And you really need to always keep this in mind, because as a salesperson, you have two goals at any time, any given time. You have your ultimate goal is to sell the product, close the sale, get a new client. But you have an immediate goal of to progress to the next step in your sales process. And in the only exception is for this is that if you sell a one call close product, which in that case you probably shouldn't listen to this training, because this is about scheduling appointments, but your immediate goal is just to get to the next step. It's always get to the next step. And what we can often do as salespeople is we can often just always think about the ultimate goal. And it's okay to always think about the ultimate goal, to have dreams about it, to wake up thinking about it. But the thing is that if we can lose sight of the immediate goal when we're in this hostile 2 to 5 minute phone conversation with a decision maker. So we need to keep our message and our approach focused on the immediate goal. And the immediate goal here is to schedule the appointment. That is the goal. We are not trying to sell the product. The cold call is only going to be 2 to 5 minutes. It's not enough time to sell the product. Our goal is to get to the appointment. Now, one thing I want you to try to stay aware of, and on the right side of the screen, I have sort of the steps that you probably will go through regardless of what you sell. You have the initial contact. That's going to be the cold call. It could be an email. And then the next stage is the appointment. Well, that cold call is only 2 to 5 minutes. So it's not enough time to schedule to close the product. Now, what can happen is I want you to always keep in mind that 2 to 5 minutes is the cold call. So if you go beyond 5 minutes, you're either dragging the cold call out longer than you should, and you're taking too much time for the prospect, or you've progressed into what we call an instant appointment. Your appointment is actually taking place at the same time of this cold call. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have your cold call, and then the prospect asks a really good question. You get excited, like they say, well, how much does it cost, or what does your implementation look like? And then you start answering their question. Next thing you know, you've been talking for 10 minutes. Well, you're no longer in the cold call. You're in the instant appointment. And what I want you to do is I want you to avoid this, because if you avoid falling into this trap and instead you schedule the appointment, you're going to get more time with the prospect and you will get more attention. And what I would encourage you to do is not answer that question and not go down that path that leads to the instant appointment. If they ask you a good question, say, oh, you know what, that's a great question. I tell you what, I want to get into that and I want to answer any of your other questions. Let's put some time on the calendar. And you schedule the appointment. And so just be aware of that. And the other thing about focusing on the immediate goal of the sales process and scheduling the appointment is this is the beautiful thing here. By the way, on each of these slides, you'll see this red text at the bottom. On each of these topics, there's a whole training module. So and if you hear me talking fast, there's a lot of material that I'm trying to go through on this. But there's a whole module on each of these topics on YouTube. And so there's a link here, there's a title here of that exact module. So now back to this slide. The beautiful thing about focusing on the appointment is that this makes most of the prospect's objections totally invalid. Look here on this slide. Here are a few objections that you'll hear. I'm not interested. We already used somebody today. We don't have any budget to spend. We aren't making any changes right now. They will say this to get rid of you. But you know what? If you're trying to sell the product, those are good reasons to get rid of you. If you're trying to sell the product and they don't have any money to spend, well, there's no point in talking, right? But your goal is not to sell the product. Your goal is to set the appointment. And the goal is really to have a conversation. So if I want to have a conversation with you, the fact that you're not interested, is not valid, because you know what? You shouldn't be interested. I've only talked to you for 2 minutes. I haven't really had a chance to really talk to you at all. So I understand that you shouldn't be interested. That's why I want to have a conversation with you. And you could tell me at the end of our conversation that you're not interested. Those might not be the exact words that I would use there, but that's what I'm trying to demonstrate, that the objection becomes invalid. The fact that you don't have any budget to spend, that's not a reason for us not to meet and have an appointment. It is a reason for us not to maybe put together a proposal or to put together a demonstration. But something I often say when someone says we don't have budget to spend, hey, that's fine. Let's get together. I want to learn a little bit more about you. Tell you a little bit about us, and then after that, when your budget opens up next year, you can know who we are and how we can help, and you can reach back out when your budget does open up. So, moving on, step 2 is confirm availability. So this is basically checking in right at the beginning of a call and saying, hey, and the way I like to do it is say, hey, are you in the middle of anything? Did I catch you in the middle of anything? And the reason why is because, especially with phone call routing to cell phones nowadays, I mean, imagine if a prospect answers your phone they're in the line at a grocery store, right? I mean, that's not a good time for you to go through your pitch. So not only do you want to do this for a few reasons. One is it buys you a couple minutes of time. It just demonstrates respect. It builds rapport, and yeah, I mean, if they're sitting in the office, and this happens to me all the time. I call someone, they thought I was someone that they were meeting with, that they had a scheduled meeting with, and they have like people sitting in their office for the meeting that someone's calling into, and they answer my call. Well, I don't want to sit there and try to go through my pitch. I'm going to let them go back to their meeting and maybe get a time when to call them back. By the way, you could hear that and disagree with it. There's an ebook that goes along with this that you should have received when you registered, and I feel adamantly about checking to see if the prospect's available, and I explain why I believe that in the ebook. So I'd encourage you to read that if you're hearing me say that and say, I don't agree with you. Step 3 is deliver an elevator pitch. So this is 1 or 2 sentences that communicate how you help. And I'll give you 3 options here. One is you could deliver a value statement, which is, again, 1 or 2 sentences of the value you offer, how you help people, like the person you're trying to reach, you're calling. You could share some examples of, and there's actually a word missing on this slide, but the number 2 is share some examples of common problems that you help to fix. So, and number 3, a sentence that looks like that is something like, hey, I work with a lot of salespeople, and they often express not having trouble scheduling appointments. They don't know what to say when someone answers the phone, and they can't get a hold of prospects. Are you having any of those challenges? So that's an example of sharing common problems. The third one is to share a quick client example. So you could do this in 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be like a whole explanation. You can say, hey, we work with such and such company, and we provide them with this service, and it helps them to do this, and that led to this financial benefit, And that's just 2 sentences that I shared right there with you. So that's a great way to deliver your elevator pitch at the beginning of a call. And I do want to point out, as you may or may not know, I mean, my company is called Sales Scripter, and we do a lot of things, but one of the things we offer is a software application, and that software will help you to build your pitch. And right now I'm talking about you building your elevator pitch. And so the software will actually help walk you through that process. It's going to ask you some questions and help you to build what you should say at that part of your call. Step 4, and sit tight. I'm gonna go back through all these steps with an actual sales pitch, sales script. So I'm going to put it all together at the end. So stay with me here. Step 4 is what we call a soft disqualify, and this is a word that is commonly used in the sales world as a takeaway. So to take away something that you're trying to sell. Now we call this a soft disqualify because, well, a full disqualification of a prospect would be for them to say, let's say you sell something and it only works if someone has 5 or more employees, and you call someone and they only have 2 employees, and you find that out, then you would disqualify them. You would say, oh yeah, you're not a fit. So if you grow above 5, give us a call, and you disqualify them, you move on. This is a soft disqualify to not take it completely away, but to express doubt. And so right after you deliver your elevator pitch, you're going to do a soft disqualify. So right after you say how you help some other companies or the value you have to offer, you're going to perform a soft takeaway, and you're going to say, but I'm not sure if you guys need that or not, or I'm not sure if we can help you in the same way or not. This is going to, so I mentioned earlier that your prospect is going to have their guard at a medium level, that they're going to get called by a lot of salespeople. This is going to create an effect that's going to help you with those challenges, because what you're doing is you're going to create this push-pull effect with your prospects. You deliver your elevator pitch, which sounds enticing, and then you're going to take it away. So it's a push-pull. Because you're taking it away, you slightly decrease the prospect's guardedness. You might create a little intrigue. You might create a little respect and rapport on the prospect side. When I have a salesperson that I know that they're looking out for my best interest, I instantly have more rapport and respect for them. So step 4 is just real quick. It's a soft disqualify. Step 5 is to pre-qualify. So we've delivered our elevator pitch. This is how we help. We've taken it away slightly. I don't know if you need this. Now I'm going to ask you a couple questions to see if you do. So pre-qualify is asking a couple questions. And these questions should be pre-qualifying questions, which are questions that determine if the prospect has a potential fit for what you offer. It's not just really broad questions, what keeps you up at night, or what'd you do for spring break? These are laser-focused questions, and we call these pre-qualifying questions because they're not true deep qualifying questions. Deep qualifying questions would be like, what's the decision making process over there? Is there budget approved for this area? Who do you report to? Stuff like that. Those are good questions to ask. We don't need to ask those when we're setting the appointment. Those might be questions we ask in the appointment. So we're just pre-qualifying. Now, a key thing here is that you need to develop a good list of pre-qualifying questions. For a lot of this process to work that I'm sharing with you, you need to be able to develop your elevator pitch. You need to develop your pre-qualifying questions. By the way, just time out on step 5. One thing I want to point out is that at SalesScripter, we're real big on creating messaging that's tailored for different buyer personas. So your elevator pitch and your pre-qualifying questions could change when you change from one buyer to another. For example, say when you change from one industry to another, your questions could change. When you change, maybe you're selling to one company and you could sell into operations and you can also sell into finance. Well, those two different departments have different needs and different interests. So even knowing you're wanting to sell the same product, you could ultimately end up to have the strongest sales pitch, you could end up having different questions that you ask those different individuals. Now that might seem a little overwhelming, and if you're coming at this with nothing and you're just trying to get the pieces in place, don't worry. We believe in crawl, walk, run. So your crawl step would be just getting one sales pitch, one list of questions together. But the run stage, and this is after you're walking, in terms of the crawl, walk, run. The run stage would be to come back and create unique lists of questions for the different buyers that you sell to. But I'm going to give you this process here, and you can use this whether you use SalesScripter or not, but it's these 4 steps. Identify what you ultimately think you're going to try to sell this person. Identify the benefits that product or service offers. For each benefit, think about the problem or pain point that benefit helps to fix, resolve. And then for each pain point, compose 1 or 2 probing questions to see if those pain points exist. You go through that process, you'll have a list of probing questions that fit great in this process. And I'll show you how to use those questions. But again, if you go through that process, look at step 2. Identify the benefits that it offers that buyer. When you change that buyer at step 2, that's where you end up maybe with a different set of questions. When you go from changing the buyer from a CFO to a CIO, that's when you end up with a different list of questions. Now, I do want to go back to Sales Scripter to point out that 4-step process. We'll go through that with you. We will go through that with you to help you to fill out Sales Scripter, but the software will take you through that process on your own and help you to develop the optimum list of questions for each buyer persona. Step 6 is to share common problems with your buyer. So this is, again, giving some example problems. Now, I do want to point out, you don't have to go through each of these steps in order and hit each step. And I'm going to show you how you bounce around between these steps when I put it all together at the end. But sharing common problems is, if you think about the 5 problems that you help a CFO at a manufacturing company to decrease or to avoid, then you can include those here at this step. And again, Sales Scripter is going to help you to build those, brainstorm and build the optimum list of problems that you hope to fix. Step 7 is to share brief company and product info. So we want you to keep in mind that step 7 is your pre-close step. So anytime you're about to go for the close and ask for the appointment, you're going to go here. And so this is when you start to talk about you. Now, if you're switching over to this process from your natural instincts, or maybe from a process that someone else taught you, I'll tell you what a lot of salespeople do is they kind of start out a call talking about this. And Lord knows I get a lot of prospecting emails that are all about this. This is the company I work for. This is what we do. This is what I want to talk to you about. Do you need this? I want to schedule a meeting with you to talk to you about switching over to our services. Product company info only. If you notice, we're at step 7 here, and we're just now getting to this. So the rest of the process is really more powerful messaging, and it's more focused on the prospect. And now we're getting to talk about us. Now, remember, we're focused on the immediate goal, not the selling of the product. We're selling the appointment. So we don't need to get into a ton of details. And we just need to be really efficient, and we need to hit them with a few key points or pieces of information so that they understand the angle we're coming from. It triggers a little bit of interest. It triggers enough interest so that they agree to the appointment. Not enough interest so they buy the product, enough interest so that they agree to the appointment. So this is always the step we're going to go to before we close. And here are some things that you could talk about. You can share some product details, which is that's kind of the standard salesperson spiel. But what I would try to encourage you to do is have a really tight, key points where you're not explaining everything about the product. You could share the benefits that your product offers, communicate the ROI that you have to offer, explain how you're different, share a client story, paint a picture of a future state, discuss the impacts of doing nothing, share company facts. You don't want to share all of these. You want to pick a couple of them, and you might pick a couple points from this list according to how the prospect answered your questions. Step 8, and this is the final step in the process, is to go for the close. Now, what's interesting is that the majority of salespeople that I do sales coaching with, or if you did like a Family Feud interview for 100 people, and you interviewed 100 salespeople, and you said, "What's the one thing you want to be better at?" The number one answer would be, "I want to be a better closer." And I genuinely believe that if you do everything else correct, that closing should be the easiest step that you do. And there's nothing about I don't believe that first of all, I don't believe salespeople are born. I believe sales is a skill, and you can learn how to be a great salesperson regardless of your personality. But and I don't think that people are born closers, and I don't think that someone who is more firm and more aggressive and more persuasive can close better. I personally believe if you do the other stuff correctly, closing is the easiest step. And when it comes to this process, all you have to do is ask for the appointment. So if you've grabbed their attention with a good elevator pitch, if you've decreased their guardedness with maybe your push-pull, take-away, soft disqualify, if you've identified that they might need, we don't know for sure that they need, but they might need what you have to offer. There might be a concern in the area where you help to fix some of the pain points that they might have. If you've communicated how you help effectively, when you talk about your company and your product, and if you've built a little bit of interest, then it's extremely easy to say, hey, you want to keep talking about this? And I really you could say that, but you would want to flip that. But that's kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to basically confirm. Do you want to keep talking about this? So, but the way I might say that is, listen, you're asking some good questions. I think it might be really, productive for us to talk in more detail. A next step, if you want to keep talking about this, what we can do is we can schedule a 15-20 minute conversation. So, and and then you close for putting that on the calendar. But that is the 8-step process.